To go. Okay, thank you so much for another session of Chamber Connect. These sessions are designed to bring information to our members or the community about topics that maybe you're having some issues with or you'd like to learn more about. This topic was one that when Michelle and I talked a couple of months ago, I thought, wow, motivated is overrated. I like that because during that time, I was struggling with some things and I just felt like, I need someone to tell me it's okay not to feel okay. And it was like the moment I talked with Michelle and she said, how about this for a topic? I thought, wow, thank you for knowing just what I needed at the time. So I'm really excited to learn from Michelle today. There are estimated 21 million adults who suffer every single day with depression in this country. And that number is growing rapidly due to the state of the world that we've been living in the last couple of years. I thought it was interesting in just kind of looking at some numbers. Females are typically almost double that of males to suffer from depression or stress-related illness. And out of that, the predominant age was 18 to 25 years old. And I do believe that number is getting lower and lower with each decade that passes. And that's a trend that I think is a little troublesome. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Michelle. Thank you so much, Michelle. And we're excited to learn from you today.
Yeah, thanks, Tawana. I'm excited to be here and share with you all. And yeah, depression is something that I feel like if you've never experienced it or known someone who's experienced it, it feels like something that's like a distance, that it's like something you don't really have to think too much about. So I'm glad we're going to be talking a little bit about that today and about why motivated is overrated. So let me get my presentation up for you all. And if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I've done this presentation before in more of a 30-minute format. So we'll save questions for the end, but I'll make sure that we get to any questions at the end. And can I get like a thumbs up if you can see my screen? Awesome. So again, today's is about motivated is overrated and how to actually achieve your goals without motivation. I am someone who has always been more of an optimistic type of person, someone who is positive and thinks like there's nothing I can't overcome. And for a while, I thought that's all I really needed to achieve goals. But really, when I look back on most of the goals that I achieved in my life, they either with just motivation, they weren't anything big or they weren't anything that mattered too much to me. And the ones that I did achieve that really made a big difference in my life, there were these two key components that I'm going to talk about today that were present even without me knowing them. So, and I love having interaction throughout. And, I don't know if I'll actually be able to see the chat, but I have a couple questions that we're going to start with. So, the first question is, so if you want to put what you think your answer is in the chat, feel free. What percentage of Americans do you think keep their New Year's resolution all year long? If you want to put it in the chat, feel free. Oh, I think I can get the chat up here. Yeah, okay. 2, 5, 2, 13, 5. Ooh, these are good guesses. So according to a Forbes article, only 8% of Americans who make New Year's resolutions actually keep them all year long. So yeah, it's a very small percentage. Okay, one more question. What percentage of Americans fail with their New Year's resolutions by February? And today's February 8th, so it would be, this is the time that people are already failing at their New Year's resolutions. Ooh, look at that. Okay, 80, 90, 85. Okay, good job. 80% of people fail by the start of February. And I think there's two reasons for that. One is when people set New Year's resolutions, especially, or goals, a lot of times when you're setting those goals, you're setting them when you're feeling motivated, when you're excited about that goal. But what happens is life happens. Things happen in your life, life events, unexpected things happen, and that that makes the goal not as important, and it's easy for it to just let it go. And so you're not motivated throughout this time frame. It's hard to stay motivated for an entire year for something. And so that's why people are failing. And another reason is this perfectionism, or this feeling of like, it's either all or nothing. So if I fail, like especially with diets or health trends, it's like, oh, if I forgot to go to the gym once this week, I might as well not even go for the rest of the week. And that's another mentality that is not what this topic is about. But that's another thing to really work on internally, about really figuring out that perfectionism and how you can kind of let that go so you can achieve your goals as well. So thanks for participating. So this is what most people do when they set goals. They set SMART goals. If you want to, has anyone ever heard of SMART goals before? I'm sure most of you have: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. This is important stuff to achieve goals, but there's these two key components that we're going to talk about that are missing from setting these goals. So I want to share a little bit about my family and really where this whole conversation came up. So that is me, my husband, Jared. He runs Vinny's. He's the manager at St. Vincent de Paul. Many of you probably know him, or that's part of the reason I joined the chamber, because I felt like my husband knew everybody and I knew no one. We moved here back in 2015, and he grew up in this area. And then that's our daughter, Abigail, who's now 7 at Bridges, and then our son, James, who would be 3. And so it really took me hitting this like rock bottom place for me to have this epiphany of like how I'm so sick of trying to be motivated all the time. Because again, I was this person that felt like I could just motivate myself into doing anything. And so I'm going to share with you something that is very sad, but I don't want you to have to feel like you have to feel sad for me, or feel like you have to stay sad throughout this talk. But it's important for me to share that in October of 2018, our son James actually died in his sleep when he was 12 weeks old. And it was definitely the worst thing that I have ever experienced, my husband and my daughter. It was one of the most terrible things we'd ever been through. And I had actually been through the death of my nephew 2 years prior, and I was his primary caretaker as well. But there was just something different about this, something that I just couldn't get out of. And I realized that I had depression, I had PTSD, I had anxiety, all of these things I never thought I would experience in my life because of this event that happened. And so here I was in depression, anxiety, and PTSD, and I couldn't even motivate myself to get out of bed to take a shower. I would go days and days and days without taking a shower. And I couldn't motivate myself to exercise anymore. I used to be someone who would wake up 5 a.m. pretty much every day, and I would either go downstairs and work out, or I'd go out for a run in the morning. And I would miss a day here or there, but I would never miss more than 1 day in a row. And I could just do that so regularly. And then all of a sudden I found myself, I would do it once and I couldn't keep doing it anymore. I couldn't motivate myself to get out of bed anymore. So it was about 6 months after James died in March of 2019 that I really just felt like I couldn't take it anymore. I was sick of being stuck. I was sick of being stuck in depression and in this like anxiety of like, what now? What do I do with my life? And this uncertainty. I'm like, does anything even matter anymore? And Tawana and I were talking a little bit about how this pandemic has really been affecting people too. And that's why this is so relevant now too, is really for me, what was contributing to all of these things was this uncertainty about my life. And haven't we all had this uncertainty for the last 2 years? And even now with the rise at the end of in December and beginning of this year, it's like all this uncertainty where things we think are going one direction, and then the next thing you know, all of a sudden they're going in a different direction. So this uncertainty is really what makes it difficult to achieve goals, because when these unexpected things happen, it's difficult to get back on track or stay on track. And so again, this is what most people do, is they set these SMART goals. But today what we're going to do is add the and. And this is something, I have my mug here that has this and symbol, and I have it back behind me as well. This has been something that has really become a cornerstone for me and my coaching, and what I really try and help people understand, that we really need to start living in this life of and not either or. And with grief specifically, I talk a lot about feeling joy and grief at the same time, that they don't have to be separate things, that we can live life with our grief and enjoy life at the same time. That's a lot what I do is with grief work. And so often it feels like I'm feeling guilty about leaving my person behind when I'm laughing with somebody else, but really you can honor that person and laugh at jokes at the same time. And so that's what we're going to do with these SMART goals. You want to set these SMART goals and do these few extra things. So these are the two key components for achieving this success. First is accountability. Accountability is so important. And for anyone who's an employee, you kind of have like built-in accountability. Or if you have a board that you have to consult with on decisions, you have some built-in accountability. But what about for anyone who's an entrepreneur or a business owner, or for your personal goals? That's where you really need to have some accountability. And a lot of times it's really important to have someone and hire someone for accountability, because I don't know about you, but I've had accountability buddies before, but it's like a friend or a family member, and they kind of let me off the hook pretty easily if I'm having a hard time. And so having someone to actually keep you accountable is really important. And then the biggest thing that I'm gonna walk you through a little bit here is finding your why. And it's not just a surface level why, it's your deep driving desire why. So I'm gonna have you all, if you have a pen and paper handy, that would be perfect. I was gonna tell you at the beginning, but I forgot. But I want you to pick a goal. Maybe it's your New Year's resolution that you've already failed at for February. You can pick that goal again. It could be something work related, relationship related, financial, health, fun, or spiritual related. But I want you to pick a goal either in your head or write it down on a piece of paper. And what we're going to do is find your why for doing this. And so one of the reasons why so often that we're not achieving these goals is because goals require discipline. And so for me, back in March of 2019, my goal, when I came to this epiphany of like, I can't sit and try and motivate myself anymore to get up and get out of bed, I signed up for a 10K. And at the time, I was contemplating this race that I signed up for. They had a 10K option and a 5K option. And I had run a couple 10Ks in the past. They didn't really go particularly well, but I made it through them. And I had nagging injuries and things like that through them. And I had run several 5Ks. And so I knew, okay, I can run a 5K and I can do it with not too much training. And maybe I shouldn't try and push myself because I've been through a lot. But then there was this little like voice inside, this like feeling in my gut that I really need to run this 10K. And I'm so glad I decided to do that, because the 10K required discipline from me. And what discipline is doing things you know you need to or must do, even when you don't feel like it. In other words, it's doing things that you know you need to, even when you're not motivated to do them. So for me, in order for me to successfully run a 10K and feel good about running the 10K instead of how I had experienced them in the past, I knew it would take discipline, and I knew it would take me needing to exercise regularly, needing to focus on my nutrition, things that were important to me at the time and that I was trying to get a hold of, but I just couldn't, because again, I just couldn't motivate myself to do it. So first you have your discipline. Part of discipline is having someone to keep you accountable, because if someone's keeping you accountable, it's easier to stay disciplined, because then you can go and say like, oh, I just don't feel like doing it. And they can come back to you and help talk you through it, so you keep going after your goals. And then the second piece is this why. So what I want you to do is draw a big circle on a piece of paper if you can, and then you're going to draw basically a target. So you want to draw like 4 circles in the middle, and you want to give some space, kind of like this, because we're going to write on this circle. So what I want you to do is the goal that you picked, if you picked a goal, I want you to ask yourself, why is this goal important for me to achieve? Why do I want to achieve this goal? And I'll give my example. In 2019, when I signed up for that 10K, I just wanted to be healthy again. I wanted to feel healthy again. So I wrote that on the outside of my circle. So whatever that is for you, write that on the outside of your circle. And then I'm going to ask you another question. Why again? But this time, I'm going to ask you why, and it's a why to your first answer. So for me, it would be, why did I want to feel healthy again? So no longer is it, why do I want to run a 10K? It's, why do I want to feel healthy? So for me at that time, it was because I didn't want to feel depressed anymore. I was so sick of feeling depressed. So I wrote that on this part of my circle, the next ring in. So whatever that is for you, write that on the circle. And this is something you can take more time for later, but I still want you to really dive into this. So again, another question, and you may have guessed it, why? So now you're asking yourself why to the answer to the second question. So for me, why did I not want to be depressed anymore? Because I wanted to feel like myself again. So I wrote that on the next ring in. And then another question, why? Why did I want to feel like myself again? I wanted to feel like myself again because I wanted to have my identity back. I wanted to be someone that I wanted to be around again. I wanted to recognize myself in the mirror, and I wasn't recognizing myself in the mirror. And I choke up a little bit about it now, but then it broke me down and really made me cry. So your why needs to be something that really makes you cry or gets you really close to it. So you may not have gotten to that at this point, but you just keep asking why and keep asking why until you get this really visceral feeling of, oh my gosh, I really need to do this. Because for me, at that time, I had wanted to try and get healthy again because I was binge eating and doing all this stuff, eating my emotions, not exercising regularly, getting terrible sleep, all of these things. And I just wanted to feel healthy again, but motivation wasn't getting me there. So if I only asked myself why one time of why I wanted to run the 10K, my answer would have been because I wanted to feel healthy. But that wasn't enough to push me to actually get healthy. So I had to get a deeper reason why. That first reason why is usually a surface level reason, or a reason that sounds good to other people, or a reason that sounds good to who's ever keeping you accountable or your mentor. You really need to dive down deep and get to this driving desire why, because then when you do, then whoever is keeping you accountable can then ask you, okay, why are you doing this again? Where you can ask yourself, why do I really want to do this? So that is really the big key, is finding that accountability and getting to this deep, burning, driving desire why you want to actually achieve this goal. And so I'm going to leave you all with a quote, and because I love quotes, and it might seem a little pretentious, but it's actually a quote from me. But I'm leaving you with this quote because back in 2019, I forgot to share this, but I was writing a newsletter when I got to this point of feeling so stuck, and I couldn't get the words out fast enough. So I recorded a video of myself and shared it. And this quote came from that video that I shared. So anytime you want to do something that is important, you're going to need more than motivation. So thank you all for this short, brief presentation. If you want to connect with me on any of the social medias, feel free to connect with me. I love just learning more about everyone else. So if you have any questions that came up throughout, or something you have questions about, anything that I shared from my story or my presentation, feel free to ask. Thanks.
Thank you, Michelle. I want to turn it over to the group and any comments, questions for Michelle. You can also put questions in the chat box if that's easier for you, and I'm happy to share them. Lori, thank you. She said, great job, Michelle. Any questions from the group? You can use the hand function if you want to raise your hand.
I do highly recommend going through that why when you have time to do it on your own. And that was a very expedited version of it. But I would go through it on your own and really dive into that. It's so important.
Yeah, Pam Ziegler said she's going to tape her circle to her computer.
Yeah,
which
that's
is
so important.
great. Yes, it is. You know, it's funny that I have done a similar exercise to this. How many people who have children remember when they're young, their favorite question is why? And it feels like it's never going to stop. But in later life, when you meet someone as smart as Michelle, who's gone through those experiences, just the little bit that I did here, it's not enough to say, I want to be healthy and work out. Like, why is that important? And then when you start taking it layer by layer by layer by layer, I quickly realize it might not be about me, but it might be for the people that I love and want to leave a legacy for. And so that sounds a little like, who needs to leave a legacy? But you got to, I don't know about y'all, I want something to believe in with my family. I want to leave their life better than mine. So Stephanie, you can say, Pam, you know what I learned at this training today? You left Twana in the middle of her circle with no one, because Pam Whipperforth was my accountability partner at 5:30 a.m. and she left me hanging. So then it was easy for me to say, I'm done. Well, Pam's not going to be there. I'm going to go. So
I will tell her that.
yeah,
I'll tell her she left me high and dry while she's in Florida right now. So
so good at that. We do have a comment from Lori with WCCU.
Yeah, Lori, that's great. I think it's hard to ask additional whys because we may not be ready to acknowledge the underlying reasons. Yes. And that's again, like this, that's why this is something I go through with my clients, because it is hard. It's like, it's so easy to give the surface level answers. And what we really need to do is like really get down deep, and you have to be willing. And now that you know what the exercise is, you have to get to a place where I'm willing to cry through this exercise, and it's okay to cry. And I think that's a big thing I talk about too, is like allowing people to have their feelings and not trying to just tell people to stop crying. And, you know, that's a big societal thing, is to tell people to stop crying. And so we've been taught so much of our lives that we shouldn't cry, but crying is so important. And it actually can release a lot of emotions that you've maybe been holding on to as well. Any fun ways to invite reluctant friends to try this exercise?
Why?
I mean, you can, anything that, I love that. That's a great question. I mean, I've always been a big proponent of, oh my gosh, I just tried this thing. Do you want to try it with me? And you can even say like, I thought it was weird or whatever, but you know, I didn't like it at first, but when I really did it, it really opened up, you know, it really opened something up for me. And something too, when you're getting to emotional type of things, you can say, hey, let's get together and work through like our visions and our goals, and maybe set aside 2 or 3 hours in an afternoon. Or I've done with my book club, we've done little like women's retreats where we go to someone's cabin for a weekend and we work on stuff like this, and kind of setting aside time and space for you to actually be able to do it, so you don't have kids in the background, or, you know, partners or whoever that you're living with coming in and disturbing you. It's really important to kind of set aside some space and some time, and letting other people in your life know like, hey, I'm going to be doing this thing, and I don't want to be interrupted unless like the house is on fire or something's happening. I think those are some ways to get people involved. And, you know, it's a lot of times too, because I work specifically with women, and so often the women are like, oh, but what about my partner or my spouse? It's like, I want to get them involved. And really the best thing to do is to just show people that you're doing it first, and eventually they'll come around. Sometimes it's like we want them to come around sooner rather than later, but you just got to give it time, and just keep showing up as like with what you're doing, and sharing from a place of like not feeling like they need to do it, but inviting them into what you're experiencing, and not feeling like they need to do it, but that like, hey, if you want to experience this too, Let's do it together because it's more fun together. And I wholeheartedly believe it. I love doing activities and things like this together and in a group, because then when people share after, oh my gosh, that sharing, and that's how you can keep each other accountable too. When you know someone's driving desire why, it's so much easier to keep them accountable, because you know what's going to like pull at their heartstrings to be like, hey, get your butt out of bed and do what you said you're going to do, because this is why. So that's my little soapbox.
Got a comment from Michelle that it can be hard sometimes to feel like you deserve your why. You want to comment on that, Michelle?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know about the men in this group, but I know for women, this like feeling of worthiness is something that, and it's almost like it's like an imposter syndrome type of thing too, where it's like we feel like we aren't worthy of these things, either from past conditioning from our childhood or from societal things, that we feel like we really don't deserve these things. And when you get to that point and you realize that, I mean, that's when I got to that point too, of like signing up for my 10K. I signed up for my 10K. I found a therapist for myself. We found a therapist for our daughter. Like, I did all of these things because I'm just like, I need to go all in with my life right now, because my life it felt like it was in shambles. So again, it's like, it goes back to finding a coach or someone to keep you accountable, that can coach you through that and help you, because usually that deservability is something that is stemming from something from your childhood, and something that is kind of coming up in you that needs to be broken down a little bit to find why you are deserving. And what I teach my clients is to find their loving, wise adult, and have that loving, wise adult that they create themselves to talk through these things that this younger part of them is really bringing to the surface and saying that they don't deserve it, or, I'm not good enough, or those types of things.
Good question
Yeah.
from George.
Yeah, social media experiences can help or hurt, right? Yes. I mean, and that's where too, that's a great point. Cause so for me, one of the things that I did after my son died, not right away, but when I was like, okay, I feel really alone, I sought out communities on Facebook. And it was really helpful right away, because I felt, oh my gosh, I'm not alone. But then I got to the point where a lot of the groups, it's like people sharing their stories over and over again. And imagine hearing these stories about, and because I was in groups about children dying, I was like, I can't be in these groups anymore, because it's adding to my depression now. And so it's like having those boundaries and understanding. It's like those groups for me, it was great for a short time. It was what I needed then. But then as I was growing, it's like, this isn't right for me anymore. And so knowing that, depending on where you're going for social media, that things can serve a purpose for a short amount of time, but then that might be the only time you need them. And finding those right outlets that are actually going to be serving you and filling you up. And you can kind of take a little like inventory when you're in a group or on a certain social media platform. Ask yourself, is this making me feel better about myself, or is this making me feel worse? And really, with algorithms and all that kind of stuff, we know about all the algorithms. You can curate what social media is giving you. So you can stop following people, you can stop commenting on things or liking things that aren't aligned with who you are. And then, the social media algorithm will curate what you actually want to see. So for me, like, especially like Instagram too, like that's a place where I feel like it's very curated to who you want to see and who you want to interact with, because of who you're actually interacting with. So I think that can really help. It definitely can help or hurt. It just depends on how you do it, and setting boundaries. For me personally, I turn off all my notifications for social media, so I'm not hearing the dings on my phone. The only one I keep on is Messenger for Facebook, because it's like a text message, but even every once in a while I'll turn that off, because again, boundaries are super important, and for mental health and everything.
Yeah. Well, I definitely believe that there is a season for everything. And unfortunately, our time here has come to an end, and I want to respect everyone's time. These are meant to be short bursts of information. But it does kind of hurt my heart on some of the things that people go through. And so, Michelle, I appreciate you being open and candid with your story, being willing to use that season of your life to impact others today. So if you are interested in working with Michelle, you can find her information on saltprairie.com. For the men that joined us today, I know Michelle doesn't generally work with men, but there's others who do that you could also reach out on saltprairie.com. And then if you're looking for like a weekly men's group or meetup, I happen to know one with some fabulous guys right here in town. And I know it would be a place that you could go and share your authentic voice with them. So reach out to me if that sounds like something that you would be interested in. And I'm just going to leave it with this, because I do believe there is a season for everything in your life. It's a season for us to go through something, to experience raw emotion. We learn from it and then we apply it to the next thing. But I also believe that the number one thing that keeps us down is the lies from our past. And I didn't come up with that. When I was very early married, I came from a very loving, silver spoon in my mouth type family, but they would wait till all the kids went to bed. And then my parents were just always at each other. And so then as children, you'd fall asleep crying with a pillow over your ear. And one night I heard my dad say, I'm going to wait till Twana graduates and then we're going to divorce. So I was starting high school and I go, oh no. So I marched in there. I said, please just do it now. There are things, though, in my marriage, and yesterday was 29 long, wonderful years. How about ending it with that? But early on, I was so quick to just want to run. You know, I don't need you. I can deal with myself. I've been raising myself for so long, blah, blah, blah. And thank goodness I had a partner that said, no, I'm going to stay with you. And he realized that there's seasons, but the importance of family. And so we did go to some counseling and worked with someone. And one of the things that we learned, and the reason I believe crying is so important, it means you're raw and you're feeling and you're being authentic with what you're experiencing. And the lies from your past, and we all have a past, good, bad, or ugly, they shape who we are as adults. And you need to, one, know you don't have to listen to those to drive your future, but two, learn from them and then define your present, whatever you want that to be, because you are worthy. And no matter what you're going through, you were designed with a purpose, and you can teach someone else something that they need to know who's in a different season. So did I ever tell you I'm from Alabama and I could have been a preacher in my life? I'll end it with that. Thank you so much for joining us today. Go to saltprairie.com if you need to find some information or reach out with specific questions. Thank you so much and have a good day. Thanks, Michelle.
Thanks all. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. There we go. Have a good day.